everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. You're awesome, and thank you for clicking on this video. It's time to talk about Tyler, the Creator, who had a really great run. This past decade has marked this new decade with the release of his latest full-length LP, Call Me If You Get Lost. I thought it would be an interesting time to do a bit of a tier list of his catalog so far. Before I start diving into the records, quick shout out to our sponsor here. Whoop! The good people over at The Ridge. They still make these awesome, nifty, sleek, sexy, minimalist, metal-plated wallets that fit nicely in that front pocket. Hit up that link down below. Use promo code MELON for a nice 10% off your order. And yeah. All right, so Mr. Tyler, the Creator, his catalog, starting off, I think, with his 2009 album slash mixtape Bastard. I think that's as good a place as any to begin. I know this project predates much of the Odd Future hype, and it does see Tyler in a very formative stage, but honestly, I think this project is kind of interesting. You know, it's very raw, it's very weird. It really kind of seems like Tyler just is in his own world, in his own bubble at this point. There wasn't anybody sort of like coming in and spoiling, you know, his own artistic thoughts and conceptions. I think it sort of took a while for Tyler to, you know, reckon with the world that he was creating and existing in, and the way that he was sort of like perceived and then sometimes disingenuously, you know, portrayed in the media. And as a result of that, he got away from this place where he was just kind of making music for the sake of making music and, you know, being creative for the sake of being creative. To me, Bastard kind of has like a purity to it that Tyler wouldn't get back to for a little bit. Now, of course, like the production on this isn't amazing, nor is the songwriting. The rapping is obviously not as good as it would be on Tyler's later projects as well. And, you know, it's not as well conceived as a lot of Tyler's later works too. But honestly, from the year that I first heard this, I thought it was enjoyable. I still think it's an interesting project today, even with some of the more offensive lyrics and topics and so on and so forth about it. I would put this pretty solidly in the C. All right, next we have to follow this up with the 2011 record Goblin, Tyler's second full-length LP and the one that was hotly anticipated following the rise of Odd Future. This project, I think, represents nearly everything that is mediocre and I guess lacking about Tyler's music during this era. Production, for the most part, is not all that great. It's thin. Of course, you do have your standouts like Yonkers, which are moderately impressive and well-wrapped, well-performed, and do have kind of a grimy production style to them that I think, you know, works for the most part. But Lord, are there a lot of tracks on this thing that are unlikable, that are trying too hard. Obviously, there is a huge talent gap between Tyler and many of the other Odd Future members on this project, which does also bring some of these tracks down. I think this record is all kinds of annoying. I feel like it's need and desperation to like respond and retaliate against all of the negative press and negative takes that people were, you know, sort of throwing at Tyler around this time. Just kind of made this project painful to listen to, makes it make even less sense in retrospect because the time that all of this was happening just feels like worlds away at this point. But, you know, I will say to a degree, Goblin has aged in an interesting way because Tyler, again, like with Bastard, has undergone such a metamorphosis over all of these years that it is interesting to go back and listen to this and sort of hear the contrast between then and now. And hearing where Tyler is creatively, especially on Call Me If You Get Lost, you do sort of like hear how some of the ideas on this record, as well as Wolf, you know, would eventually like germinate and mature into better sounding production and better sounding ideas later on that project. So, I mean, look, I'm still not crazy about Goblin. It's certainly not the worst Tyler project and not one of the worst projects of all time. I'd put it in the D column. You know, it's interesting for its existence and the history that it plays in Tyler's catalog, but I don't think there's a whole lot else about it that really, you know, keeps me coming back to it. But there it is, Wolf. Wolf, I think with every year grows to be a more and more interesting project. Now, that's not to say that I love it or that I think it's one of Tyler's best, but I think this is a record where he at least like makes an attempt at getting a little bit more conceptual and making a slightly more mature LP, but I think in so many ways he kind of fails, and you know, not for lack of trying. I think he fails because his rapping and production abilities aren't quite there yet. So his attempt at kind of getting ambitious, going above and beyond, and making a more artsy project here, they don't go quite far enough. This project is well-intentioned, and there is like still some like residual edginess from the Goblin era that does weigh a lot of the tracks on this LP down. But, you know, again, even more so with this project, you can hear how so many ideas coming out of Tyler's production during this era, as well as his rap style, would eventually bring him to the creativity of Call Me If You Get Lost. It just kind of needed time to incubate. Wolf has a lot of quality tracks on it, and there are aspects of it that are highly respectable, especially now that it's easier to kind of see where Tyler wanted to go or wanted to achieve eventually down the road with these sounds and with these ideas. But, you know, by no means is it a perfect project. It's still an incredibly flawed one. As, like I said, you know, there are some issues of edginess, obnoxiousness, and you know, just kind of a lack of execution on the production and rapping side, as well as the odd future connections that aren't necessarily doing him any favors at this point, which he understandably kind of separated himself off of that eventually down the road, because, I mean, Odd Future couldn't stay a cohesive unit forever. So, you know, Wolf, again, I think is an interesting project, has some enjoyable pockets. Next, we have the 2015 album Cherry Bomb, again, immediately following Wolf. And this LP, I think, is Tyler's worst. This is my least favorite Tyler, the Creator record, but I do think this album plays an interesting role in the overall Tyler narrative. This project is a really important metamorphosis point because this is almost like a really weird, awkward, like fork in the road evolution point for Tyler, as he kind of references back to it on Call Me If You Get Lost, mentioning this record is kind of shifty, and it absolutely is. There are tracks where the production is absolutely terrible, some of the worst beats and mixes he's ever done, and it's like he's trying to be edgier than ever and more aggressive than ever. He doesn't want to let go of the early years and kind of that nastiness and rebellious attitude, and simultaneously, he also wants to pump out these tracks that are like super soulful and slick and sweet and more sensitive. And, you know, those aren't going over quite as well as they would down the road on his later records. And as a result, like, this project just sounds like a mess. There's still tracks on this thing like Fucking Young that personally, like, as far as like lyrical content goes, like, rub me the wrong way a bit. Yeah, I'm just not really into this one at all. All right, now we come to 2017's Flower Boy, which was quite a surprise for me, especially given how little I enjoyed Cherry Bomb. I hated Cherry Bomb when I reviewed it. I still don't like it to this day, but Flower Boy just really impressed me upon first introduction. This was a really refreshing project from Tyler. It's so well produced. It's so well put together. The features are really complimentary, and I just like the smoother and I guess more easygoing sound and vibe of this project. I guess you could say, you know, it lacks the bite of some of Tyler's early work, but honestly, I feel like he kind of needed to tone things down a bit and also just focus on the rest of the world less, just obsess less over rocking the boat in order to give himself a bit of space to think about and conceptualize just the way that all of this stuff should sound. And again, kind of get back to like the sake of creating for creativity's sake, because, you know, the whole, like, I guess, controversy of Tyler and his ability to rile people up and I guess like just trigger people in the ways that he does, kind of seemed like it was dying down on Cherry Bomb. And I don't think Tyler was going to stay afloat creatively if he didn't kind of gravitate away from that, because, like, you know, you can't be this rabble rouser forever. That gets old eventually. You know, we've seen people like Marilyn Manson and Eminem and any number of music stars in the past who that's like essentially their MO, and they try to like ride that train forever, and it doesn't go over well because, you know, there's a certain point at which like people kind of get sick, or no longer is like super edgy, or it no longer excites people or offends people in the way that it used to, and everyone's just kind of like rolling their eyes because there becomes a point where it's transparent and it's obvious that you're just doing it because you know the reaction you're going to get out of it. Flower Boy is a record, conversely, where Tyler is focusing on the music. He's focusing on the songwriting. He's focusing on the production. He's focusing on mellower sounds, yes, but also just more beautiful and more nuanced sounds. And yeah, I just think it's a well put together record. Over the years, I think it's proven in the short amount of time that it's been out, I mean, only 2017, it's proven to be a pretty influential record in terms of like its production aesthetics, the vocal melodies involved, as well as, you know, the very soft and I guess more sensitive strains of hip hop, left field hip hop that have kind of come out in the wake of this record. It's a well put together, tasteful, beautiful LP. As of right now, this album stands as kind of the benchmark between old Tyler and new Tyler. In some ways, this album kind of greatly achieves what Cherry Bomb was attempting, because you do have some bangers on here. You do have mellow moments, but they all go over really well. They're all well balanced. I would put this album pretty solidly in the A column, but bam. All right, let's move it on to Igor. Here it is. Great record in my opinion. My most glowing Tyler review ever. I would just put it in the S. It's going in the S section. Not only is it a wonderful, chaotic, moving little record about a breakup, a triangle, you know, this like a tumultuous love narrative. The flow of these tracks is great. The production is so unique and warped and creative. I find his approach to low or, you know, more mid-fi textures and sounds on this LP to be unlike anyone else in his generation of rappers, producers. I think Tyler did the impossible on this album, and that was, you know, given the tumultuous discography he's had up until that point, came out with one of the best records of the decade, point blank, period. This is the album, in my opinion, that is not only Tyler's best record to date, but it's the album that kind of proves he had it in him all along to pull this sort of thing off. And I guess all he needed was the focus, the experience, and the time to get to this point. From Earthquake to I think there are so many great highlights on this record, easily some of Tyler's best songs to date. And I love the way the record opens up, closes. It's really an experience of an album that I think and I hope that people will be talking about and celebrating for years to come. This brings us finally to Tyler's latest full-length LP, Call Me If You Get Lost, which I talked about in my review as a bit of a vanity project from Tyler, and it's not quite as super threaded together or conceptual as Tyler's last two albums, but that's fine. He's obviously not going for that sort of thing this time around. He's coming together with a looser collection of tracks that hit a bit harder, are a bit more aggressive, and I think he goes back to a lot of those edgier and meaner and nastier attitudes from the Goblin and from the Wolf era, but he just has so much more to say, and he's producing and writing so much better than he used to. So, you know, even the points where he's kind of going overboard a little bit, you kind of take it because it's so well done, in my opinion. His ability to dissect his world as well as tell stories, you know, is sort of shown and improved on this project, as I think he's already kind of proven he can do that pretty well on Igor and Flower Boy. You know, I think this album in many ways is really just like a victory lap, but then simultaneously, you know, an expression of determination and sometimes sadness as well, given Will Shire, which in my review is a point of contention for a lot of people. And I do appreciate the story and the narrative of that track, but I'm just not really crazy about the long-windedness and the execution of it on the production side. But still, given all this, like, I think Tyler has kind of proven he can, you know, go back to a lot of those older vibes and come out with gold, and in a way, like, show us what he was trying, you know, attempting to do all along, and just approach it with a more mature and level head this time around, because there are a lot of bangers on this LP, and there are moments of just like sheer creativity where he continues to push past a lot of the Flower Boy and Igor stuff, like thinking about I Thought You Wanted to Dance. Like, the way he kind of creates that dub reggae vibe on that track is incredible. With this record, I think Tyler has come together with one of the better 3-album runs in rap music over the past decade or so. And it's going to be interesting to see how long he's able to kind of like keep this momentum up over his next several albums. So fingers crossed that he's able to do that. I'd put this one in the B column. It's a very good one. For right now, that is my Tyler, the Creator tier list. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What's your Tyler, the Creator tier list? Is it like mine? Is it totally flipped? Fill me in, and we will see you in the next one. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Tyler, forever.